because the major countries that are moving away from the United States through the BRIC movement, Ron, they keep acquiring gold. They're not acquiring it for a trade. They're not speculating in it. They're acquiring it as an asset for a key reason still to come. And so how we get to 2,500 and then 3,000, yes, it could be because a lot of people are suffering, but it's also going to be because it's going to be for what gold has always been for a couple thousand years, an alternative to paper money.
$3,000 gold, $100 silver. Will we ever see these prices during our lifetime? And will they be but a symptom of major underlying issues? Today, we have a special guest, Mr. Peter Grandich. He's been working on Wall Street, analyzing the economy, the gold and silver market for decades. He's appeared on CNBC, Good Morning America, and today we are fortunate to have him here in Ron's basement. Peter, welcome.
Welcome, and I can start by telling you I'm coming to get that bear's blindfold.
For those of you who don't know, Peter's referring to the blindfolded bear. The blindfold comes off when we get $2,500 gold. So what about $3,000 gold, Peter? Do you think that's in the cards during our lifetimes?
So there are a lot of things going on, Ron. As you noted, I'm about to celebrate in March 40 years in and around the financial arena. And almost nothing is the same for what it was when I first entered. The markets, how they operate, people's thinking, the situations we're in. We're in a near perfect storm of economic, social, and political upheaval, all coming together, both here and abroad, to set us up for, I think, and I don't sell anything, or in my financial planning group, most people don't want to hear what I'm about to tell you, and it turns them away, not on. But we're going to, within 3 to 5 years tops, it could happen sooner, but more likely within 3 to 5 years, that we'll be in such a dire position that the Great Depression may be like a walk in a park compared to what people are going through. And the reason I say that is, at least in the Great Depression, we had a couple things going for us that we don't have now. We were a much better, morally fit nation, willing to help each other. That is not the case anymore. The division in America has never been greater, probably closer to what it might have been when we had just before our Civil War. And we weren't yet a fully industrialized nation, and a lot of people were still in the country and there was farming, you were able to grow your own food and all. We don't have that ability. So many more people are dependent on others to give them just necessities, food and clothing and water and et cetera. So when you ask, will we be at $3,000 gold or 2,500, which we have to go through first, you have to ask yourself how bad things will be and what will drive that price if it's gonna. Is it because there's so much blood in the streets that the people that still have money don't trust money anymore, and therefore they want to have a hard asset? Well, that's part of the argument of the crypto nuts, the Bitcoin. I'm sorry, it's Bitcoin. I call it Bitcoin. But they created this can't miss, best thing that ever, better than fire or the wheel or anything that was ever created in mankind. And you're going to need to have that. Well, you know, if that's true, if things are going to be that bad, I'd rather be counting on something I have in my hand that's on versus in some data place on a computer that claims I have riches and so forth and so on. So it's how we get to 3,000 and what caused it to get there. I personally think it'll be a combination, Ron. I think it'll be a combination of what's happening and the fact that systems are changing, including the world monetary systems, what the central banks are dominating and want to look for, digital currencies. It's going to be a way of life. People don't like to hear that, but listen, when the BIS, which is the central bank's central banker, basically says it's coming without question, as far as they're concerned, it's a matter of time. There's no turning back on that. And part of the concerns people will have is, I need to own something that's outside of that. Now, of course, that's part of the Bitcoin argument, but I think it will also be gold, and gold in a more dominant way, because the major countries that are moving away from the United States through the BRIC movement, Ron, they keep acquiring gold. They're not acquiring it for a trade. They're not speculating in it. They're acquiring it as an asset for a key reason still to come. And so how we get to 2,500 and then 3,000, yes, it could be because a lot of people are suffering, but it's also going to be because it's going to be for what gold has always been for a couple thousand years, an alternative to paper money. Real quick, a study just came out and showed that over the last 100 years, gold outperformed every currency, including the US dollar.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because I heard it said recently that, over the last 50 years, the United States has enjoyed this position of power, hegemony. We ruled the world, and that the next hegemonic power of the world could maybe be gold. And that's what we're seeing. And maybe it always really has been, but that it reemerges as this conduit that is used amongst the nations of the world to conduct trade. And this person even went on to say, which I thought was interesting, is that if you look back at history, periods of time when gold and silver were, predominantly used as money, that the world's a much more peaceful place. That really this fiat system that we're under now facilitates governments' abilities to print endless amounts of money and go on endless wars and things like that. If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pembex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pembex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement.
So the Don't Worry, Be Happy crowd, which makes up most of the financial service industry, clearly most of the financial networks and the financial media that's tied to the hips, they scoff and laugh still at the BRIC nations and the movement. And I believe that when the BRICS are all said and done, and it's probably 3 to 5 years in that same time frame that I have about America's terrible downturn, they're going to rival what they're doing with the world economy and trade will rival what the Industrial Revolution did for world trade. Listen, these countries are not forming to be better partners with us. They're forming to have nothing to do with us. And they had something to do with us before, and no one wants to talk in this Don't Worry, Be Happy crowd is. Even if you don't think they're going to be half as big as some of us, like I think are going to be, that's trade that used to happen that isn't going to happen anymore. They're not dealing with us. They're already dealing among themselves. They're already dealing in local currencies and not using the dollar. We've already seen a significant oil producer out of the Middle East say it's no longer going to take dollars for oil sales and all. And yet Wall Street parties like it's 1929, which it really is, because we all know what happened come 1930. And so I think there are so many reasons to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Now, I don't want these things to happen. I'm not sitting here because either I sell survival food or guns or ammos or cabins in the woods. I don't even have any relationship with any gold bullion salesperson or anything of that nature and all. But I believe it's a course that we're heading down. And one of the few things that will likely hold its value, if not increase, will be gold. Yeah. Yeah. In these BRICS countries, and I think it's important to recognize now there are 10 of them. I want to get your opinion on this. If they are indeed, which every indication is that they are, putting a higher level of value and priority on things like real assets, commodities, and of course, gold and silver, could you see a point where they are the dominant economic force in the world? Because China, India, Saudi Arabia, when you go through the list of 10 countries and the 30 additional countries that want to join up with them, they become quite a powerful alliance. And if they are trading amongst themselves and they are maybe not explicitly yet talking about backing a currency with gold, could the United States find itself in a position where
they're over here and they're working with each other, and they are basing that upon, let's say, gold. Okay. And then we're over here and we want to trade with them, and we're saying, well, we have paper money. We have paper money. I mean, could we be in a position where almost by default, for lack of a better term, be forced to revalue gold in US dollars? Does that make sense?
Well, America is going to be outside looking in. And
Yeah.
the unification of these countries, and when you think about the natural resources they control, the number of people that it involves it, the 2 to 3 biggest nuclear uh, holders of weapons will be part of that group. Uh, it will not only rival the US economy, it will overtake it and then some. At a time when the United States is going through this upheaval that I envision. And so what we will then do at that point in time, our debt is completely out of control. The ability to pay the interest, according to the Congressional Budget Office, could be in major jeopardy. We have a retirement crisis where 65% of Americans are working paycheck to paycheck. We have an immigration invasion when many are good people, and I'm not saying they're all terrorists or anything like that and all, but it's now estimated that there's well over 20 million illegal aliens, and it's continuing. They've come with their shirts on their back, even if they're all good people and they're all just wanting to leave an oppressed place, and I understand it, and they can have a better life here. The problem is, what do they bring? They bring liabilities, not assets. So you have that issue. You have the BRIC issue that I just spoke of. And then the thing that you would hope that could work through those other 4 issues doesn't exist because we have political paralysis. We have 2 parties that cannot absolutely, anybody involved in national politics will tell you there is no bipartisanship or a desire for any bipartisanship in any way, shape, or form between the 2 parties. But then within the parties, we have parties that disagree dramatically with each other. We even have now of the 2 people that remain running for the Republican nomination, Trump and Nikki Haley. She apparently kind of sold her soul to the Democrats in order to keep competing. And, she's alienated, and she has some followers within the Republican Party that are alienated against this group. So the political paralysis that exists at a time when we're going to need it more than ever to fix problems this country has never seen. So it's extremely hard. And quite frankly, Ron, it's impossible for me to come up with a positive scenario other than I have to put on my faith hat, get rid of my secular, which I try to
Yeah.
separate in my business, and say that no matter what all happens, I have to have the peace and tranquility that what I believe in my life and what this life is mere a quick flip of a finger compared to where I'm going to end up in one place or another.
Yeah.
And when I say hell, I'm not talking about owning junior resource stocks. Don't get confused. Although they can seem in recent years to be the same thing. They
Right.
certainly have for me.
Yeah, me too. we're in that one together. It feels like I love the word confluence, when I'm analyzing stocks, when I'm analyzing world events, when you have a confluence of events, things coming together that create a more powerful force. And we don't want to be doomsayers, or like you said, we're not selling food kits or bomb shelters or anything like that, but we do want to be people that are assessing risk, and the risk seems to me higher than any time since I've been alive. Is that your assessment of things as well?
Ron, a small percentage of people, in fact, it's been noted some of the extremely wealthy people got extremely rich from before the pandemic to now. But
Mm-hmm.
by and large, most Americans, the largest percent, 80, maybe even 85%, have gone sideways to down.
Yeah.
We see it. We know that almost 2/3 are working paycheck to paycheck without any ability to save for retirement. Those beautiful ads that the financial firms run and all, and you live happily ever after. But then we also see now the difficulty of people even to sustain day-to-day life, having
Yeah.
to use credit cards at an exorbitantly high 20 or 30% rate just to charge for gas, for food. Rent has gotten so out of hand. So you can't keep having this diversion of too many people falling down and just a handful of falling up to where all the people fall down and go look up at the ones that are up way up over there and go, oh, we got to go get some of that. And so
Yeah.
part of this, and again, I don't root for this, but there is a separation of class. There is a battle of classes, and there's also going to be a battle of ages. You know, one of
Mhm.
the issues that's real apparent in the side of the work that I do, and it's very important because we have so many boomers now reaching retirement age and will continue for the next few years, is all polls, I haven't found one yet that differs, polling people 65 and over. Their biggest fear now is no longer dying. It's running out of money while they're alive.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible feeling. I've met some of those people. I hear from them. I go on this national radio show. It's a Catholic network, and I'm always willing to hear from people, even though they clearly don't have assets and all that, we could manage with and all. And I can't tell you how many of them are so overly concerned that they're just not going to be able to continue living in the manner that they've grown accustomed to or anything close, or fearful that if they get sick or ill, they can't afford $10,000 a month to live in an assisted living or a nursing home or something of that nature and all. And these are all so many issues that we can go through and all. But now those people are going to say, listen, I need my Medicare. And yet the cost of Medicare is going to go up. And then you have a 30-year-old, a 35-year-old guy that's working. He sees he's being taxed out of his thing and going, wait a minute, you're paying for 85-year-olds to have lung transplants, and I can't even now pay for my own gas because you keep raising my Medicare out of my taxes. So we're going to have a battle of the ages, fiscally
Yeah.
and otherwise, as well as other demographic ideas, and throw in all the immigration stuff and everything else. There's just no happy ending that I can come up with. And,
No.
and when you said earlier, that's the difference back in the 80s and 90s. There was still reason to have legitimate hope that the troubles that were brewing would not lead to such a dire situation. But we're here now. It just reminds me of an old movie. A lot of people won't know it. You'd have to be an old man like me. But it was a great movie. Henry Fonda was the president. It was called Failsafe. And it was during the heat of the Cold War. And somehow these planes that always flew with the nuclear weapons gets triggered that there was actually a war. And as it's going towards Russia, they're trying to convince them that that's not real. And then it gets to the point where you can't turn around. It's too late. That's where the United States is now, socially, politically, and economically. We just can't turn around and go back. It sounds great, and I understand when the people that say make America great again and all that kind of stuff. But there's so many landmines and detours and people of a different ill and thinking that going back to that era of the 60s or 70s or whatever people say that's when it was great. It's just not ability. Not to say that an election of Trump or somebody like that can lessen the blow or slow it down, but there's no turnaround. There's no making this a simple thing of getting back and having happy days here again.
Fortuna Silver Mines is a global intermediate gold and silver producer. Since 2005, Fortuna's best-in-class management has delivered impressive growth and profits. Fortuna's solid financial position and operational expertise allows for performance in any precious metals price cycle and provides a foundation from which to harvest great profits in more favorable metals markets. Investing in Fortuna is an investment in quality, long-term, sustainable production of in-demand precious and base metals. I think part of the reason for that is a lack of accountability. It feels like to me, especially over the last, let's say 10, 15, 20 years, that there's almost been a plundering of the country, that like the political elite and the ultra wealthy, which I don't want to say they're one and the same, but I think it's safe to say that the wealthy kind of control a lot of the political decisions made, that everybody's just kind of plundered to some degree, the country. I mean, whether you talk about like healthcare, and I saw a statistic the other day about like average healthcare costs per American, and it's like tripled over the last 20 years. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Well, Ron, it gets more into some things that maybe at another date we can get more into, but
Yeah,
it's part of a moral decay that's occurred.
yeah.
Relativism and wokeism has come into vogue because a belief of an ultimate superior way has disintegrated compared to what the founding fathers built on and how the first, say, 200 or so years America ran. It
Yeah.
ran on a spiritually led principle that most people, even if they were of different faiths, came together because there was a unification in between there. But as we moved away from that, and relativism is basically saying, hey, you want to believe that, that's fine. You don't have to believe that, that's fine. And then, of course, we all know what wokeism is. We see it now. And of course, we've seen the moral decay in schools where we're telling children that they can decide to change their own makeup and what they are and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
These things would be our grandparents or great grandparents who passed away 30 or 40 years ago could never begin to imagine that this would be everyday life, which
Yeah.
we're in now. And it's not just here in the United States. And to some extent, people are starting to rise up, but how they'll be able to rise up and what good will come out of that rise up is still a question to be answered.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I have twin daughters who are in middle school, and when I hear things that go on in the public middle school these days, it's a bit alarming. And uh, just the confusion that people feel. And you touched on this earlier, right? That we're being told, and I hear it now. It seems like the message is coming through more and more frequently, maybe because of the election, but just for instance, that the economy is great, that everything's fine. That inflation's under control, the jobs market is great. That Americans, I sense when I talk to my neighbors, when I talk to everyday people, that people feel something's not just right. Something they feel, not to say a little crazy, but a little crazy because we're being told, look how great everything is. But as we try to live our lives on a day-to-day basis, from a financial perspective, from a moral perspective, like you touched on, things are becoming more and more difficult.
So when past terrible places, communism, Hitler, all of that, when propaganda was used to convince the people of something that really didn't exist, those people had no other way of knowing the difference.
Yeah.
Now, those people that are expressing to you some concerns and all, they turn on a particular network and they hear, wow, things are great and all, yet they tune into internet where more independent minds are not
Yeah.
put up in that. And they hear that and they go, yeah, I agree. But why are those, and of course there is an element of society that just goes with whatever the mainstream is saying.
Yeah.
And there's a party that takes advantage of that. The Democrats have taken advantage of that not deep thinking, and recognizing, the media. Listen, this whole illegal immigration thing, in my mind, is statistics have shown that immigrants that come in illegally from the past, long before it became an acute problem, almost 90% of them when they end up becoming voters, they vote Democrat. So here's the bottom line that people need to accept. Now, some will disagree, but I'm telling you, it is. This is a movement, and why the Democrats have open boarded, don't care is this is a way of getting power perpetually for years to come.
Yeah.
That's the reason. Unfortunately for them, they haven't taken into account that now this has become such an acute problem that Americans' everyday life is impacting. See, it was one thing, Ron, a few years ago, we would see these things happening in Texas or Arizona, but most other states were going, oh, it's basically an issue down there. Look at those poor people near the border, but it wasn't impacting us. The first thing that started is when they started to ship them around the country. Okay. But now that it's gone into so many areas and people be impacting, schools are being used, airports are being used, people who were going to have homeless and vets who were going to have buildings in Maine had them taken away so illegal aliens can be placed there, won't pay rent for 2 years. I mean, these are the type of things now that it's being hit in America, and what we will do about it, and can we stop the bleeding or slow the bleeding, is still the question at hand. But make no mistake about it, this has been purposely accepted behind closed doors by a certain group of thinkers in the Democratic Party, that this is a way for us to eventually have power that will never be overtaken because most of the voting will be for us.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when we talk about these issues going on and like, major actions that our country and our leaders need to come together to help rectify, the environment right now is not one in which our political leaders are working together in any way,
They
shape,
want
or
to
form.
work together, Ron. That's the key.
Yeah.
Democrats don't want to sit down with a group now, Republicans, and go, yeah, you're right. We really need to stop this illegal immigration. Not if I'm correct about what their plan is. Why do they want their plan to be interrupted?
Right.
They're already seeing how it's moved in certain ways and so forth and so on. So that's why I said the political paralysis is here. And that's where you were expecting, how are you going to solve these issues that we have when two parties can't even be in the same room together with each other now?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Peter, I think we can see a road to $3,000 gold. Who knows, $50, $100 silver, but the path there is probably going to be quite challenging, right? I mean, as this confluence of factors comes together.
I'm coming for that bear, Ron.
You and I, we've had a great conversation today. There's a third person who's joined us and enjoyed hearing from you as well. So on behalf of the viewer, I want to say thank you, all the viewers of my channel. It's always great, Peter, to catch up with you. Your experience and honesty and insight, in my opinion, is second to none. And I count you as a really great person and a great friend. If someone wants to learn more about you, learn about your organization, how would they do that?
Well, there's a website, petergrandich.com. There's a blog there. It all describes everything and anything about us, including all my write-ups. They can read online. They don't even have to give an email for that. I spend a good deal of time on Twitter. That's where I share my thoughts on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm blessed to share interviews like yourself that give me an opportunity to speak, and occasionally I interview people, including you. And that's where it goes. And I just want to again tell you that when gold's trading at 24.75, I'll be contacting you for how to get a direct flight there.
Where you're on the East Coast, correct?
Well, I'm in a place where most people owe me a gratitude for being there in New Jersey, so they didn't have to be.
Okay. Now we'll get you to St. Louis, Peter, and we'll do a live broadcast of the removing of the blindfold from the gold bear.
Right? With the gold price just as it hits 25.
Whenever it is, 24 hours a day, we'll make it happen. Thanks, Peter. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
God bless you, Ron. Thank you.